Iceland. For what purpose?
Basically, his involvement is, as far as I understand, is to track down Mr. LaHote.
Unless he took a statement from any of the witnesses that may be relevant here, it's cumulative testimony.
Okay.
And may not be particularly on point. So if you can give me something more from that standpoint. I mean, I've heard things about the license plate number, that the incident's over with. You know, we've had several people who actually witnessed the incident. So if we don't have a statement by the defendant or a statement by somebody else that's relevant, that's not hearsay, I don't know what the detective can add. I don't want to foreclose you if there is, but if it's just going to be more of the same, it's cumulative. Almost all the evidence here has been duplicative of each other.
Evidently, I mean, basically, Your Honor, it was just that he did make the arrest of Mr. LaHote, that he did speak to Mr. LaHote and asked him for a statement, which Mr. LaHote did not provide.
And Mr. LaHote has the right not to do that.
Certainly.
So, you know, it's
Certainly.
not particularly material, so we can dispense. We certainly appreciate, Detective, your presence in being here, but I think we've heard from several witnesses and we've not heard from Mr. LaHote. And I think that that's something that we all want to do. So do you have anything else, Ms. Iceland?
Are you addressing me?
No, I'm addressing her at this point. I'll address you in a moment, okay?
Thank
you. I want you to get your chance to tell your story. Jeez. Anything else, Ms. Iceland?
Other than the fact that Officer Esser issued the citation pursuant to Detective Carpenter's request to know, Your Honor, if the court does not want to hear from Officer Esser.
That's cumulative. It's based on information and belief.
Correct.
So we actually have the original and not the copy. So if that's the case and the city has rested, Mr. LaHote, finally you get your chance.
I'd like to have Mr. Carpenter on the stand. I have a lot of questions for him.
Well, if they're not relevant, they're going to stop really quick, but go ahead.
They are relevant.
Well, I'll make the decision of that.
Yes, sir.
Detective Carpenter. You solemnly swear a testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Have a seat, please. And adjust the microphone to your liking. And would you state your name for the record, please?
Detective Michael Carpenter.
Your witness, Mr. LaHote.
Thank you. Did you arrest me, Mr. Carpenter, on June 11, 2014?
Yes.
Did you have an arrest warrant?
No.
Can you tell me who the judge is who signed the search warrant?
Objection. Oh, I'm not an objection. I don't make the objection. It's late in the day. I'm the one who gets to say he doesn't have to answer that. So on the court's own objection, that's not relevant, and you're out of the water on that already.
Well,
If you have relevant questions, you can ask them, but unless it pertains to the actual incident, there was no evidence presented here that was seized as a result of a search warrant, so whether or not there was a search warrant is absolutely irrelevant, and you will not be allowed to inquire into that. Move on.
not exactly sure where the boundaries are, where I can and cannot inquire about the search warrant. So
You can't, unless there is evidence presented here that resulted from the warrant, and on top of that, it's not on the table at this point. There was no evidence presented that was used pursuant to the warrant, right?
Trying to get there.
Well, I don't see that there is.
At the moment, I'm just trying to find out whether or not he even
Very
had a
good.
warrant.
Hold on, sir. Detective Carpenter, was there any evidence in this trial that you sat through all day today that that resulted from the search warrant that presumably you executed in this case?
No.
There's your answer. Next question.
Did you find any videos of any children out of all the searches that you did on my electronic devices, including my cell phones, of any children? Can you go into detail?
No, I just remember there's images and videos of children. I don't remember in what regards.
Let me try to
You-
narrow that
you-
down. Pardon me. Were there any images of children taken on February 4th, 2014?
No, videos from that specific date were not located.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Lote.
You had searched my car and my home and took my cell phones. Out of all the cell phones investigations that you were able to do during the time that you investigated this crime, were there any cell phones that had the capabilities, functionality of audio and video recording?
I honestly don't recall off the top of my head.
Do
If
you
I-
recall, just one moment, Detective, when was this warrant executed?
June 11th.
4 months after the incident?
Yes.
Too remote in time.
Can you explain why there's such a time difference?
Irrelevant. Go on.
On what grounds did you arrest me on?
Irrelevant.
On what grounds did you get your search warrant?
Irrelevant. Any question about that is not going to be allowed, sir.
Did you review the security camera video that we just witnessed prior to arresting me?
Irrelevant.
Who did you speak to about the incident at McDonald's?
I didn't speak with anybody at McDonald's.
Co-workers?
I'm not quite sure I understand your
Objection
question.
sustained.
Okay.
At this point, what I'm
How
getting
did
at,
you
sir, is
get-
you're not asking any relevant questions.
How did you get to the point where you determined that you were going to arrest me and based on what?
I'm sorry, Mr. Lote. I've already told you that that's not an area, the officer in this case, unless he tells me that he personally witnessed this event, what he based probable cause to arrest you on is not on the table here. The issue is whether or not there is sufficient evidence to convict. If you wish to raise a challenge to the sufficiency of the arrest, you could have done so by the way of pretrial motion. That was not done. But in this case here, we've heard the testimony of the original witnesses, not hearsay testimony, speculation, and conclusions of the officer, which he may or may not have been allowed to make. It's irrelevant and immaterial for any purpose before the court today. It will not be allowed.
Thank you. I'm just trying to determine Mr. Carpenter and Mr. Fine, who arrested me on June 11, 2014, did not have an arrest warrant. I'm
So,
trying to determine what legal authority did they
Stop.
have to arrest me.
stop. That's not on the table at this point in time, sir. The issue, we've heard the evidence in the trial. We are not dealing with the issue of the arrest. If there was a warrant, whatever occurred in this matter, the officer's opinions are irrelevant. So, we actually heard from the actual witnesses in the case. And that will include yourself. We've also heard from you. We've heard from people who were there. Unless this officer was there and witnessed something, or we used evidence that's relevant, but apparently at this point there's nothing there that's relevant.
I'm trying to find out what the relevance is of
I am too, and so
why-
far you haven't shown me, so you're going to have to move on. The court has the ultimate authority in the control of the calling of witnesses and the testimony, and if you do not ask another relevant question, Detective Carpenter will be excused.
Well, in my mind, they are relative, but in yours, they're not. Why did you arrest me on June 11th?
That has already been stricken on this point. Mr.
Okay.
Lowe, you're painting the court into a corner that I would rather we not be in. I believe your actions constitute contempt of court. Specifically, that conduct is repeating to ask questions that the court has ruled irrelevant and not heeding the court's warnings with regard to that. What is your explanation for your actions, sir?
I'm trying to determine what the relevance is of why I was arrested 4 months later for a situation that they took my computer and my camera.
United States versus Hoffa, there is no right to an immediate arrest. That's a matter of law decided by the federal courts, so that is irrelevant. And at that point, I appreciate that, but I admonish you that if you continue with that, I do have the opportunity to impose sanctions of up to $200 or 7 days in the Waukesha County Jail. I would rather not impose those sanctions on you, so please govern yourself accordingly. I want you to be able to tell your side of the story, but we're not getting there by these tactics which are obfuscating the search for the truth. The truth of what happened 4 months later has nothing to do with what happened on February 4th, unless you can show that there's evidence here that was used or that would be relevant to the case. So far, you haven't shown any. They've not produced anything that was seized from you and used against you. None of the witnesses here. The evidence has become cumulative, laborious, and I'm admonishing you at this point that if you do not follow the court's directions and rulings, and if you continue to argue with the court, at some point, the court will take appropriate action with regard to sanctions. I do not want to do that. I want you to have your day in court, but you don't get to have all day. You are entitled to a fair trial, but that is not a perfect trial, nor is it a trial where you get to make that call. So, unless you have a relevant question for Detective Carpenter, I will excuse him. And a relevant question will not be the third or fourth incarnation of one the court has ruled inadmissible.
Thank
Go
you.
ahead, sir.
Thank you. No, I'm just trying to get to, there's a lot of questions that I have.
Once again, you are arguing with the court, sir, on rulings that I have already made. Now, if you would
No
like
further
to spend the night in the Waukesha County Jail, continue with that. I want you to ask the question, but the court has made its ruling. Please continue.
I have no further questions.
Thank you. Detective Carpenter, you may step down. Thank you. This is one of the reasons why the court kept trying to rein you in on beating up on Detective Carpenter in his testimony, because of the fact that indeed this search and this arrest was 4 months plus after the alleged incident, and no evidence was uncovered in a timely manner. May I have the appearances, please?
Ann Iceland appears on behalf of the city of Waukesha. The city also has 3 officers present here.
And Mr. Lote, you're here in person?
Yes, sir.
Do you have an attorney representing you, sir?
No, sir.
Okay, very good. Well, welcome to the court. And one of the things that I have a responsibility to do as a judge when I have people who are unrepresented is to kind of look out for the rights of the people who are unrepresented, and just not specific legal advice, because I can't give you that, but at some point, you may want to consult an attorney about some of the concerns that you've raised.